All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody had a good time at the party last night. Hope nobody had a bad time at the party last night. You all made it here, so it couldn't have been that bad, and probably couldn't have been that good either. My name is Tristan Todd. I am a field solution architect. I work for a storage company called Pure, and I'm based in Portland, Oregon. VMware alumni for over 10 years. I joined Pure a couple of years ago. Let's see, got a bunch of dogs, got a wife, got a kid, may or may not have a VMware tattoo, and I may or may not show it on stage today. I'm currently a vExpert. I run the vMug in Portland, and I'm active in the digital experience community, which is kind of a new part of world of EUC. So, wanted to talk a little bit about supplemental storage for VCF. It's a hot topic, especially this week as we kind of discover how intrinsic VCF is going to be on all of our lives and our futures. But maybe we could talk a little bit about breakfast and eggs. Anybody love the vegetarian powdered eggs this week? Has anybody escaped the conference breakfast to go find real chicken eggs besides me? Anyway, they were light and fluffy, but also kind of gelatinous and oozy. But let's dive in. So what is supplemental storage? There is the concept of a management domain and a workload domain in the world of VCF. Your management domain, a required component. It is the first data center domain environment that you stand up for all of your infrastructure VMs. Actually, a fair amount of kit required to support the management domain. About 5 TB of capacity, 11 VMs, and you kind of have to go with vSAN initially, especially if you do an automated deployment. That management domain is going to live on vSAN. However, there is the concept of supplemental storage, which we'll get into in a second. Workload domain is kind of where all of your applications, your workloads, if your management servers are pets, your cattle are going to live in the workload domain. And here you have a lot more flexibility from a certified storage platform perspective, right? I think VMware is favoring vSAN and everything software-defined storage. But if you're on a certified platform, NVMe, Fiber Channel, NFS, iSCSI, it does afford you some benefits and I think some flexibility. I depicted kind of a generic diagram here that shows a VCF layout with a management domain and the core management capabilities, and then this supplemental layer in kind of this turquoise, where you could have a storage array or a network attached storage service or some other compliant storage platform that advertises its compatibility with VCF so that you can place workloads on there dynamically. You can shift workloads, meaning you can start with vSAN, but then you can complement your environment. Another depiction shows supplemental storage with the management domain. So you have to start with vSAN, but you can expand and you can scale out, or perhaps you can kind of follow an additive model where you have the same storage platform or set of platforms advertising capacity and capabilities to both the management and the workload domain. Does anybody run VCF in this configuration right now? Kind of a hybrid layout? Not now, but you're planning? Awesome. And then kind of fully building this out, looking at both principal and supplemental storage with a third-party storage solution, not just software-defined. So really bringing everything together where you have vSAN, and maybe you're using Max, maybe you're contributing with a storage cluster, SAN-like experience, but also the ability to kind of do a more of a traditional approach. Is anybody in love with their SAN or NAS so much that you can't fathom the idea of a future world without a SAN or NAS? Okay, I'm old school, so I'm a traditionalist. I like my compute, I like my pizza boxes, and I like my arrays, and I like my capacity shelves. And it's really hard for me to get around the concept of a block or a cube that includes all the network, all the storage, all the compute. And I used to work for Nutanix, so you'd think that I would have drunk the Kool-Aid and I would have been an HCI convert. But I'm here to tell you that after watching lots of large-scale customers go all in on HCI, there are some drawbacks. And we'll get into a little bit as we talk about how to pick good supplemental storage platforms. So why supplemental? Often it comes down to scale. You can't add nodes or you can't add direct storage resources fast enough to grow to meet your use case requirements. Performance, let's face it, the applications we deploy today, maybe the VDI environment we architect today, could have a very different workload profile based on the applications that you deploy. Maybe you moved off of CrowdStrike, you implemented Sentinel-1, it added 5% CPU and IO overload. And at 10,000 desktops, that becomes a massive change in your requirements. And this is really common. The other thing is features. So the ability to take advantage of maybe hardware accelerated snapshots, replication, deep security capabilities, maybe some kind of advanced log function that helps you meet that security requirement. Features are why you might choose to add supplemental storage. Node availability. Does anybody here during the pandemic and the immediate shift to work from home have to augment your VDI or your remote desktop environment for work from home? Suddenly you had hundreds of users that needed to remote in to access applications or desktops. Anybody? Nobody? All right. Did anybody place a compute hardware order during the pandemic and have like a 6-month delay? Maybe you're ordering UCS. I know Cisco had that was rough. Well, imagine that you're in a uniform VCF environment. You're trying to maintain uniformity of processor, maybe uniformity of hardware, but the supply chain is frozen and you have to wait 6 months to just grow your environment. So I think node availability, when it comes to fixation on VCF, is a strong consideration. And we have recent experience to know why that could be a pain point. And finally, just flexibility. The ability to shift workloads around to different layers to take advantage of innovations in the storage space, I think is really key. And I think the VCF messaging this week was a message of automation, of ease of ownership, built-in automation to help lifecycle challenges kind of disappear or get a lot easier. And then also just all of the intrinsic value of not only AI, modern development frameworks, and we'll throw in telemetry and observability as well as key characteristics, benefits of a VCF environment. So this is circa 2014, the height of the storage wars. And I don't know if anybody went to VMworld back at the time and walked into the expo and you were met with some of these wild folks. And you were kind of awash in, like, VMworld became the storage conference of the year. And we had lots of options. Well, how many storage partners are out in the expo this week or were in the expo this week? Not a lot, at 2 or 3. Because of the storage wars and because of the battle that we all fought, some of these storage partners disappeared. So we don't have the luxury of going across, a sea of options and getting all of these startups maybe to compete with one another on price or included options, things like that. So now we have to really fall back on not marketing being directed at us, selling us on these concepts, but really looking at a core set of characteristics when it comes to storage. So I'm just going to go through, and my button is kind of auto advancing, so I may have to go manual. All right, so let's talk about cost. So cost is a very different conversation today because perhaps the Broadcom pressure has changed your cost dynamics. Cost is not all about buying a platform or buying a solution. It's also the cost of owning and operating. After the purchase, after the deployment, what does it cost you to run that environment? So it's key to consider the ease of management, the ease of life cycle, as well as a lot of companies have very flexible buying models. You don't always have to make a big capital expenditure to buy a storage platform or a service. Sometimes you can buy capacity or performance month to month, kind of a cloud operating model. So cost considerations, I think, is top of mind for everybody. Is cost and economics top of mind for y'all? Yeah? Okay, me too. Steep learning curve, right? If it's a very complicated platform that has awesome features, brilliant performance, but it's really hard to learn, you have to go get your master's degree in that storage platform. That's probably a detractor from that particular platform. Automation, I'm going to talk about table stakes, but I think automation, built-in automation, PowerShell SDKs and toolkits, API examples, code examples, maybe Ansible, Terraform, manifests that are out there are really key because we don't live in a world of click, click, next. We live in a world of I have 10,000 objects and I have to apply a thing to all of those objects at scale with great velocity. Complexity, I think I talked about this a little bit already, but having to learn a new platform that has lots of knobs and dials and switches is daunting when you're trying to get your maybe your arms around the new beast that is VCF, or maybe you're just trying to keep up with a dynamic business environment. Ease of ownership, again, how easy it is to upgrade the hardware, expand the hardware, upgrade the software. Is it something that is non-disruptive? I think that's a key characteristic. HCI and VCF, it's all about modularity, right? You have a bunch of blocks, they're contributing network, compute, storage resources. Wouldn't it be nice if you had that same modularity in a supplemental platform? So you don't necessarily want all the same colored Legos, but you want a very nice, elegant, stackable solution that has linear scaling factors so that it's not always a science experiment to calculate how much performance and capacity you might need. Forklift upgrades, it's kind of an old school concept, but it used to be that if you're running a big array and you upgraded or maybe switched vendors, they would roll in their array and somehow you would have to figure out how to get your data via forklift from one array to the new. Well, these days, modern storage platforms have lots of ways that you can replicate cross-platform. And there's lots of efficiencies with things like HTX where you can go platform to platform. So do consider when you're looking at supplemental storage, if I'm going to move my data from vSAN to that other platform, does it require a forklift? Does it require a couple of forklifts, one tall, one short? By the way, I like to generate a lot of images with AI. So I have to include AI in my talk because that's just a requirement these days. You got to mention AI 10 times in every prezo. So I'm just using AI to generate images. Telemetry is key. Is anybody a data junkie? You like to see speeds and feeds, or you like to go visit the NOC if those things still exist and see the scoreboards and the dashboards with lots of graphs and red and green bubbles? I'm a junkie, and I think any data service platform, any storage platform, even if it's a cloud platform, should have really good telemetry and observability. You should be able to see red, yellow, green. You should be able to sample hundreds of metrics, and you should be able to take those metrics and access them via an open service layer. And that's where we get into the spicy AI generated images. This morning, I just put in table stakes in my AI image generation. I ended up with a two-headed gambler. I don't know what's going on there, but anyway, lots of good artifacts. Table stakes in the world of data services is, I would say, an open service layer, a RESTful API that's well documented, maybe structured with Swagger attached. Certainly something where you can see lots of examples. Like before you let a vendor into your data center or your cloud environment, make sure you see their service layer. Make sure you see a demonstration of their APIs. Make sure that those APIs are open and can be accessed for maybe the telemetry dashboard of your choice. Is that a fair ask of all of us vendors? We give you an API that's up to date, well documented, secure, and efficient. Those are the key things. What was it at Google? Bezos in like 2002 said, everything that Amazon does has to have a service layer or you're something fired. And that quote is still nascent today. Cloudiness. Increasingly, people looking at porting workloads to the cloud or blending clouds. Pick the public cloud of your choice. So a storage platform that knows how to transit or knows how to blend across clouds is also a key characteristic. If your CIO or CTO comes to you and says, I have an all-cloud initiative. By the year 2030, we're going to be all in the public cloud. Might be nice to have a supplemental platform that has a cloud play or a cloud capability. And again, don't take anybody's word for that. Make sure you have proof. Make sure you talk to customers of that platform and you actually understand the reality of cloud. Another AI-generated image, if you spot any cool artifacts like 2 ears, 6 fingers, whatever, just call them out. I love AI artifacts. But world-class support. Support not only that you call 1-800-STORAGE, but you also have maybe a predictive hardware failure capability. A scenario where a metric that's aberrational initiates a workflow where support calls you and says, hey, customer, I opened ticket CS495, and because we see this anomaly in your data and we are concerned. That's kind of a table stakes support offering, I think, in the world of data services today. Did you guys want to see slides with lots of big charts and words? Are you guys craving that? Because you came to the wrong session. I'm not going to do that on the last day of VMworld. Environmental considerations. So in the year 2020, 20% of all the power in data centers was just for storage. That was in the year 2020. By 2030, that's going to double, and 40% Some people estimate half of the power in a data center will be powering storage systems, whether it's HCI or whether it's a supplemental or a third-party platform. So I believe that we should all consider the cost to power, to cool, to house that storage service. Anything that has data reduction, compression, modern ways to squash the data or maybe be metadata focused to eliminate waste is really key, because in our lifetime, we're going to see the elimination of, hey, we can't add another aisle of servers or storage arrays because there's simply no power. Has anybody faced a project that was kind of stalled because you were waiting on power, waiting on a PDU to get deployed or something like that? We see it all the time. In Europe, there's actually restrictions where, you know, there's a moratorium on building new data centers in some countries, in some regions. Some of your favorite public clouds, if you actually ask the cloud vendor, like, is there space in, you know, US East, you'll find out that many of the services are not available because they're just out of room, they're out of power, they're full up. So environmental considerations may seem like kind of a green philosophy, but it's just a matter of reality these days, or it should be. I can't not talk about security. Every layer in your software-defined data center, in your modern private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, needs to have a security role. Not that the storage platform offers all of the security capabilities, but it's part of your layered approach. And it could be that snapshot on storage is your first layer of protection, integration with a third-party backup solution is a second layer, or maybe replicating the data to another array in another region. Or the ability to have that telemetry focused on anomalies that are indicative of a security breach. For example, if I have a large VMFS volume and I'm tracking through metrics, through telemetry, the data reduction ratio, and all day long it's 5-to-1 data reduction efficiency, right? And I come into work and it's 1-to-1. That could be indicative of an unexpected encryption event. And I might have a nice little email or a note from a ransomware person saying, hey, if you want to decrypt your data, send us some Bitcoin, which has happened to many of the customers that I talk to day in and day out. So take security seriously, because you don't want to end up a headline. You don't want to end up in court. And as a result of a malicious attack on your environment, if your systems are compromised, it could be that law enforcement is going to wrap crime scene tape around your environment and you're not going to be able to access it. So it makes for a really stressful, bad day as an IT professional. I'm not going to go through all of what I covered. This is just a review. If you're kind of thinking about making an investment in a supplemental storage platform, I would say these are some, probably not all of the things that you need to consider. Just some of the factors, some of the goods, the bads, the attractors, detractors that you need to look at. There's lots of really good survivors of the storage war still out there, and there's still startups that are coming to market with new innovations that benefits us all. I'm a pretty social guy. I come to this conference every year and I love to socialize in person, but whether you're on MySpace, Discord, LinkedIn, Threads, traditional email, hit me up. I am big on networking. I love to collaborate. I love to hear from people that say, Tristan, you're just wrong. You forgot this other factor in supplemental storage. But I really appreciate you staying all the way through to nearly the end of the conference today, coming to my talk. I think there's a survey of some kind out there, but I don't have a link for it. But thanks for the time today, and I hope everybody has a really safe trip home after this conference. And we'll see you next year. So thank you.